The $35 logo that built a $114 billion brand. The story behind the Nike logo. Welcome to Two's Studio. Big brands often spend millions on their visuals. For instance, in 2000, British Petroleum underwent a rebrand and a new logo design that reportedly cost around $200 million. But did you know that one of the world's most recognizable logos, the Nike Swoosh, was created for just $35? That's right, the $114 billion brand began with a logo on a budget. But this story has a happy ending. In fact, a multi-million-dollar happy ending. And here's another surprise. Nike's iconic "Just Do It" slogan was inspired by the chilling words of a convicted murderer. The swoosh, Nike's famous logo, traces back over 50 years. It was 1969 at Portland State University when Carolyn Davidson, a young design student, complained near a stairwell to a friend about not having enough money for oil painting classes. She had recently switched from studying journalism to pursuing a degree in graphic design. Who overheard this complaint? Phil Knight, an assistant accounting professor with a growing side business in sportswear. So, the young professor approached Davidson and offered her a small gig at $2 per hour, creating charts and graphics for his meetings. Phil Knight was a former track runner at the University of Oregon, where he was coached by the legendary Bill Bowerman. Bowerman had coached 33 Olympians and was known for his innovations in athletic shoes. Knight later earned an MBA from Stanford University. In 1964, Knight and Bowerman reconnected and launched Blue Ribbon Sports. Initially, they sold Japanese running shoes in the US, but soon they started producing their own. Sales were tough, and revenue was often insufficient. It's said they sometimes had to sell shoes out of the trunk of their car. Knight even took a job at Portland State University to supplement his income. And that's where he met Carolyn Davidson. In 1971, after experiencing difficulty with their Japanese manufacturer, Blue Ribbon Sports had to move its production to Mexico and needed a new brand name. Knight and his partners narrowed down their options to 3 choices: Dimension 6, Falcon, and Nike. We all know which name they chose. Nike is inspired by the Greek goddess of victory, an idea reportedly dreamed up by one of the company's managers. They also wanted a new logo. The goal was to create a design that conveyed movement, but looked distinct from major sports brands like Adidas and Puma, which were dominating the market. Davidson started by sketching a shoe on paper, then layered tissue papers with various logo concepts on top to see how they fit. She developed 5 or 6 sketches and presented them to Knight and the other 2 members of the management team. Initially, the swoosh wasn't an instant hit. Their response was, "What else you got?" But eventually, they circled back to the swoosh, feeling it was the least bad option. Davidson wanted to refine it further, but they were short on time and needed to register it with the US Patent Office. This led to Knight's famous remark about the swoosh. "Well, I don't love it, but maybe it will grow on me." Knight paid Davidson $2 per hour for her work, totaling $35 for 17.5 hours of effort. Years later, he humorously remarked that he wasn't sure she'd actually worked that long on the design, while Davidson later recalled, "I had taken design classes, but I didn't know anything about business. So, I charged $35. That $35 is about $270 today." Davidson worked with Nike until 1975, designing ads, posters, brochures, and more. But as the company grew larger, the work was just too much for one person to handle. So, they decided to work with a full-service ad agency. Carolyn left Nike and continued her freelance work. Due to the success of Nike and its logo, which was Davidson's first logo design, she earned the nickname Logo Lady. In 1980, Nike had captured about 50% of the U.S. athletic shoe market, and Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman became multi-millionaires. The business was booming. In 1983, Nike's president at that time, Bob Waddell, suggested to Knight that they should do more for Carolyn. So Waddell called Davidson and invited her out to lunch. But when Davidson showed up, there were all the Nike employees present. And it was a surprise party. They gave Carolyn a gold ring in the shape of swoosh with a diamond in it, and more importantly, 500 shares of Nike stock. At the party, Knight talked about the $35 that they had paid Carolyn and said with laughter that at that time they asked her to not cash the $35 check right away. Those 500 shares Knight gave to Davidson were worth $85 at the time, but are worth $3 to $4 million today. Nike worked on many ads, billboards, campaigns, TV commercials, and some of them have interesting stories behind them as well. One such story is Nike's most famous slogan. The "Just Do It" tagline took shape in 1988, suggested by two copywriters working with Nike at that time, David Kennedy and Dan Whedon. Whedon, who pitched the slogan to Nike, later admitted that he took inspiration from Gary Gilmore, a man who committed 2 murders and faced the death penalty in 1977. The trial and the death penalty became famous because it was the first execution in the U.S. in almost a decade. Before his execution, Gilmore, who chose a firing squad, reportedly said, "Let's do it." Nike also faced some allegations and lawsuits that went viral. One notable incident occurred in 1997 when Nike used a flame-shaped logo on an Air Max shoe, and some people claimed that the design resembled the word Allah. In Arabic script, Nike apologized and discontinued that model, even though it was a misunderstanding. In 2021, Nike sued the art collective MSCHF for presenting the Satan shoes, a modified version of one of Nike's models, Nike Air Max 97, with explicit satanic imagery. As a result of the lawsuit, a judge ruled that the modified Satan shoes could not be sold. But let's go back to the swoosh. Since Davidson designed the logo in 1971, it has undergone a few minor changes over the years. For example, in 1978, the logo was refined to be bolder and thicker, and the company began using Futura bold font for the wordmark. In 1985, a version of the logo was introduced with the wordmark and swoosh surrounded by a square with a red background. However, this square frame was eventually removed, and the swoosh-only symbol became the primary Nike logo, which is still in use today. Follow 2 Studio and enjoy stories about the designs that shaped our visual memory.